Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's video and thank you for watching last week's video. Today's video is going to be a little interesting. We are discussing the 5 most iconic watches in movie history. I'm Marco Nicolini.
And I'm Alfred Green.
And let's go ahead and dive right into it.
To get started, let's talk about the Tag Heuer Professional 1000 and one of my personal favorite movies, The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, so that watch Leonardo DiCaprio famously wears, and the scene where he's showing off the amount of money he's got, he's wearing that gold. It looks like a GMT Rolex. I was mistaken when I first saw the movie because I just automatically assumed they used a solid gold, 1675
or 2 Rolexes.
Yeah, I thought I thought they were Rolexes,
yeah.
But to my surprise, they were actually Tag Heuer. So back in that time, these guys were printing money, like especially Jordan Belfort. Like these guys were really just going nuts. So you think they would go for a gold Tag Heuer in real life, or would you think they would go for an actual gold Rolex?
Back in the 90s, when you bought a watch, it was a bluesy or it was a Datejust.
Exactly.
Those two-tone or solid gold bluesies and Datejust.
Yeah, and I think I also noticed Jonah Hill. Maybe Jonah Hill had the Rolexes, because I swore I saw a gold Daytona in there somewhere. But again, maybe it was a chronograph Tag Heuer, and I'm mistaken.
And I'm glad Wolf of Wall Street was number 5 on our list, because that's definitely one of my all-time favorites.
Same, I love that movie. And coming in at number 4 is probably one of the most iconic watches I know everybody out there is going to recognize, and that is the Omega Seamaster from No Time to Die. This watch was famously worn by Daniel Craig, as you guys know, kept that series going. It was probably arguably one of the better series just because of the technology used in that movie. Obviously, the animations and so forth just really set that movie apart from the older generations, even though, you can't knock Sean Connery for wearing the Rolex. But we've definitely moved on in, cinema history to, Daniel Craig now wearing the Omega, and Omega is now fully partnered with all the James Bond series moving forward. So we will probably never see Rolex again on the big screen when it comes to James Bond, but that's okay. I mean, the one thing I like about the mesh strap is like they've integrated the mesh strap with the use of the holes, so you get an accurate sizing. You get good capability of sizing it to what you need, because like you gotta think, like Breitling introduced the mesh bracelet too, like in their run of watches, but what I didn't like about Breitling's is like you pretty much had to almost cut the mesh if you wanted it really short, because it just pretty much pulled to size.
And it's pretty thick too.
And it's thick, and
the No Time to Die one is like really thin.
Yeah, so it's almost like they designed a metal bracelet to behave like a leather strap, which is pretty cool.
And coming in at number 3, we have the Rolex Datejust 16013 with the champagne tapestry dial in the movie American Psycho, played by Christian Bale.
Yeah, that's a great watch. And what makes it so interesting is that dial is very unique, because it's a tapestry dial, which it's a 3D textured dial. So it kind of looks like, if you looked at it flat, it's going like this. It's in a wave, and it's printed in such a way where, when you look at it, it's very dressy, and it's very loud for being a Datejust dial that's just normally otherwise flat.
Yeah.
But this dial is actually indeed like an actual wave, the way they printed it, and that's why it's called the tapestry dial.
And then when you talk about classic American watches, I mean, that's the first thing you think of.
Oh yeah, the two-tone Datejust was the symbol of success back in the in the 80s and the 90s. It was like if you had a two-tone Datejust, you had it made. Like, nobody cared about Daytonas. Nobody cared about, these crazy hype watches we have now. Like, the two-tone Datejust or the stainless steel Datejust was the symbol of the American dream back then.
Yeah.
And the Rolex president as well. So to see that in the movie just clearly pays homage to what was actually, in fact, relevant in that time.
Yeah.
So, number 2 on our list is the Rolex Paul Newman 6263 Panda Daytona, worn by Henry Golding, played by Nick Young in the movie Crazy Rich Asians. There's a scene in that movie where he's on the bed with his girlfriend, I believe it's girlfriend or wife. The only thing I was paying attention to in that scene was that watch. But she's giving him the watch as a gift, and she just kind of casually gives it to him as if it's not really anything special. Just here's a watch, and you made a big milestone. Like, this is a scene where he's kind of telling her about this big milestone that's going on, and he's like, well, here, kind of plays into the, congratulations, here's a watch. But that watch just happens to be a 6263 Panda Daytona, and it's a 3-line Panda dial. So, this watch in the market would trade today for like between $600,000 to $700,000. So to use a movie prop that expensive is quite a logistical nightmare for the directors and the producers to go through all these motions just to get a watch here for a scene. It's like, so they really put a huge touch on horology into this movie, because not only did they use a Paul Newman Daytona but rather they also used, you know, other Richard Milles, and like they used a lot of luxurious stuff in that movie because obviously the title is Crazy Rich Asians.
Would you say that that watch was like one of the first pandas?
That is the, yes, I mean that, well, no, 6262 and 6264 was the true Panda, and Panda by definition is strictly black and white.
Yeah.
So like a normal Paul Newman dial, like the one Paul Newman himself owned, was a what's called a three-color dial, which was black, white, and red.
Yeah.
So it had the red tracks on black with the Panda-esque type dial, but the true Pandas are the ones that are just black and white.
Yeah.
And you know, so that was the watch that was gifted in that movie, which
Yeah, it's sick.
it's a very sick gift. Like if I could find somebody to give me watches like that, I'd be a happy man. So.
And finally, at number 1, we have the Rolex Submariner 6538 Small Crown, worn in the James Bond movie Dr. No.
Yeah, so this is the watch that I kind of mentioned earlier that had the rotating bezel that actually works. So, funny story is that watch actually sold at auction because it was just strictly a prop watch. It didn't even have a movement or anything. It just had a battery inside to operate a motor to spin the bezel, and there was a scene where he's like cutting a rope with the watch to free himself up. And you know, that's really where that watch kind of debuts itself and really shows itself off.
Yeah.
You know, was that one scene because it really showed like a close-up of it back in the day, which you can kind of, even in a close-up back then, just the way, you know, cinematography was back then, you could barely make out that it was a Rolex, but you could see that it was a Rolex. And you know, but in today's world, if we would have had this watch on camera, you would have probably seen the wires running on.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting piece. So you know, obviously the 6538 Small Crown is an incredible watch in today's market. Still, they're still selling strong. Like we just sold one through Grand Caliber. And it was all factory original with a very interesting patina dial. It was very patchy, but it had a lot of really like caramelized coloring, like coming.
It's the one with the red triangle, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a red triangle sub. You know, small crown. You know, they're very well known for their case shape and design. It's like their lugs are a little different than like a 5513. Say they're kind of more like curvy.
Like more like the 5508 that I owned.
Yeah,
a few months ago.
Yeah. For our honorable mention, it's the IWC Woodland chronograph watch, famously worn by Tom Cruise. You know, Top Gun obviously is such an iconic movie, especially close and dear to my heart as I'm a huge aviation fan and, you know, actively wanting to learn how to fly planes. I used to do it back in the day, but, you know, obviously it's a very expensive, you know, learning curve, especially when you're 20, trying to figure that out. So that's why I'm paying homage to that. You know, it is a great watch. IWC definitely heavily leans on their marketing with Top Gun, especially that, you know, that movie has been re-released again, and Tom Cruise has played that role again, and it was an incredible rerun of that movie. So thank you guys for watching today's video. In the comments below, let me know what watches have stood out the most to you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. We'll see you next time.